all in all, bear with and we shall get comfortable in the garden. Apologies for the real world noises. Shall I take my glasses? Probably better. Right, we're off. We're off ski, I think. Right, let's sort out some settings before I get too carried away. So, bear with. Right. See if that works. Never know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Oh, well, this doesn't look like a bad spot. Yeah, I think this is not a bad spot. View's not too bad. Saw my third drone about half an hour ago since I've been here. So one for each year. Same as the others. Just a tiny little thing buzzing through the air. Like a little radio controlled plane. It's effectively what it is. What's it doing here, you may ask? Yeah, good question. Anyway, today's topic of discussion, assuming the live stream works. So if you come to Russia and you apply for TRP, part of that, once you're granted TRP, is that every year you must file, we would call it a tax return, I'm not sure if that's what they call it here, but you must file a document to show that you are able to support yourself. Now, obviously the easiest way to do that is to speak Russian and get a job. But there are an awful lot of people on TRP that won't be able to speak Russian, which is the whole point of TRP. And if you can't speak Russian, the chances of you getting a job other than as an English teacher are going to be slim to none. So you've got to come up with, well, not necessarily come up with, but you've got to show an income. And that income must be generated in Russia. Now, I think they are still accepting savings from outside of the country. So, for example, if you sold a house in the UK, you could show, as long as you've got the paperwork to show that you sold the house and the money going into your bank in the UK, etc., etc., you need to get that translated. And as long as you've got that, I think they will still accept that as evidence that you are able to support yourself. But it's closing, that gap is closing. But ultimately, what you've got to do is show that you are generating an income in Russia. Now, the easiest way to do that is with savings. And whilst the savings themselves don't count, you can't just submit a return saying, oh, I've got 2 million rubles in the bank. They're not interested. You can't submit bank statements. They're not interested. But what you can submit is a savings account statement showing interest paid. So effectively, you need to have, if you're going to go down that route, you need to have enough money in a savings account to generate interest for the year. Now, this doesn't mean that you've got to show that interest every month. It's not like you've got to have X amount in the bank for a whole year, generating X amount every month. What they're interested in is an amount for the year. Now, that's calculated on but the region's minimum wage. That is your minimum requirement. So you need to find out what region you're in and what the minimum wage is for that region, and that would be the minimum amount that the government would accept, that you could show that you are capable of supporting yourself. And it's kind of obvious, really, because if a government accepts a figure of minimum wage, they're accepting that you can live on that. So that's your minimum number. If you have a pension from another country, for example, and you want to show that, you can, but you'll pay tax on it. So just understand that. And it's not, it's not UK tax, it's 13%. So it's not, it's not a huge amount. And maybe that's the easiest way. You just show that you're getting a pension. And again, you haven't got to show that every month. So you haven't got to show a payment going into your bank every month. You've just got to show an amount for the year that exceeds the minimum wage. So, for example, you can have a pension in the West, and once a year you could fly with your partner maybe back to that country, take out that money, that interest or that pension, and then bring it into Russia and then pay tax on it. And that would be your tax liability, and you'd be able to show that you're supporting yourself. But the easiest way, the far easiest way, is, like I say, to pay money into a Russian savings account and then generate enough revenue in interest that you can show that. Now, you could do that every month, you could do that every 3 months or 6 months, but possibly the easiest way is to put an amount into an account that generates enough interest for a month. I'll tell you what I mean. If, for example, your minimum requirement is 250,000 rubles for the year, and you get 10% interest in the bank, you would need to have enough money in the bank to generate 250,000 rubles as a one-off payment, to show that you can support yourself. So you just have to calculate how many rubles you would need in the bank for a month or two to generate that revenue. Hope that makes sense. The form itself is very simple, but it is in Russian. You can use Google Translate to translate it and fill it out yourself. It's a very straightforward form. And that's it. That's your requirement. But it is a requirement. Now, I know a lot of people are here on TRP, and you've got to remember that they don't tell you this at the TRP stage. It's your obligation to find out, and Russia is very much like that. They expect you to find out. They're not going to hold your hand and tell you everything that you've got to do, what your obligations are. So there are a lot of people that don't understand that and haven't filed. Well, some people certainly err on the side of, well, I haven't needed to yet. And I'm sure that's worked so far. It's not going to work forever, because they are tightening up everything regarding residency. And for me, it feels like the government is heading towards a more stricter existence for foreigners here in Russia. I think when the 702 decree came out, it was quite loosely worded in some aspects. And I think a lot of people just sort of thought, oh, Russia's a free-for-all. And since then, they've brought out several more decrees that sort of narrow certain requirements down. And for me, it feels like Russia is heading towards options of two. You are either going to come here as a tourist on a tourist visa or a family visa, or you are going to head towards citizenship. And it doesn't seem to be, there is middle ground at the moment, but that gap is closing. Case in point, TRP, you don't need to speak Russian for 3 years. However, if you want a Russian driving license, you've got to speak Russian, and it needs to be pretty fluent. So there are certain things that, you will have to wrap your head around as to what you want to do. The same with a tax return. You've got to show that you're generating an income here in Russia, not just sitting on your laurels. So I think there's an expectation that, people will head towards citizenship. The other thing that has changed in TRP since I applied is you are now required to sign a military contract. So if you apply for TRP now, you are required to sign a military contract before you are granted TRP, temporary residence permit, in case anybody's wondering. Now that has all sorts of implications as a foreigner. And I believe that that's a grave mistake if Russia's intention, or the government's intention, is to attract Westerners. Because it effectively rules out 95% of Westerners now coming to Russia and applying for TRP. So, do I agree with it? Well, it doesn't matter whether I agree with it. It's Russia, and these are the rules. So it's not really down to whether I agree with it or not. It's more of a life choice. If you want to come to Russia and you want to apply for TRP and you're unsure about going for permanent residency and citizenship, and you just want to try it out, then I would say forget it. I would say that you are far better off to get a tourist visa or family visa and come and have a look around until you're certain. If you're sort of half certain, then it's not the way to go, because to apply for TRP, you will need to sign a military contract. Now, the knock-on effect of that is that will affect potentially you being paid your pension in your home country. Bearing in mind that most countries do not accept you signing a military contract for a foreign nation. So potentially you rule yourself out of a pension. But the other thing you do is put yourself into a bracket of breaking, Western laws. Well, most countries, to be honest. For example, the UK does not allow a UK citizen to sign a military contract for a foreign country. So effectively you're breaking the law if you do that, which means if you return to the UK, there's a very good chance that you will be arrested at the border for breach of immigration rules or whatever. So, you've really got to be certain in your head that you want to come to Russia as a permanent thing, because TRP is no longer really for you to try it out. It's not an option for you to come and give Russia a go for a couple of years, see if you like it. That's not what it's going to be. It is now the stepping stone. And once you start down that path, you have to be clear in your head that that's the path you want to be on, because the next step is permanent residency, and beyond that, citizenship. Now, on temporary residency and permanent residency, you have to file a tax return showing that you are able to support yourself. But as a citizen, you don't. So unless you're, a business, in which case you'd probably be registered as an entrepreneur and you're paying a much lower tax bracket, or unless you're working for a company, you don't have to file a tax return or show anything. You're a Russian citizen. Clearly you're supporting yourself. So obviously the citizenship route, ending up there, if you want to come to Russia, you've decided that's what you want to do, that's the direction you need to go. But certainly I don't think anybody really should come to Russia on TRP thinking that that's going to be something that they can do just for a couple of years to try it out. Because like I say, you've got to file the tax return and you've got to sign a military contract. So that they're two things that are going to be quite a sticking point. Christ, look at the size of him. He's getting bigger, that cat is, I swear. So they're two things that are a requirement. You're going to have to do it. I don't know why I brought his glasses out. I can't even see through them. Hello. I cannot see through these glasses and cannot read this in this light. Let's go in the shadows. Ooh. That's better. Hello, sir. Morning. Does signing a military contract put you on a list for mobilisation if required? Right, so my understanding is signing a military contract means that you have to serve 1 year in the armed forces. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going off to the front. Russia doesn't work like that. It does mean that you will have to serve at some point. And that may well be what we would call back of house, maybe. Logistics, etc. Maybe you do want to go to the front lines. Maybe that's, who you are and that's your personality. But effectively it means the same as it does for a Russian citizen, where all Russian citizens have to do 1 year's military service. It's the same thing. And regardless of how painful it may be, I think it's correct. Now, bear with me on that. It shouldn't be, in my view, any different for a foreigner wanting to come and have the benefits of living in Russia without willing to be in the same position as a Russian citizen. Why should a Russian citizen have to do military service for their country when a foreigner doesn't have to? It doesn't make any sense. So, Derek's got stuck. Poor old Derek, look. He's gone to sleep. Come on, boy, off you go. That's it. He's off now. So, yeah, whether you like it or not, and if you come from a country that doesn't have compulsory military service, then you can sort of go, oh, it's a bit, don't want to do it. But Russia does. And much like if you went to Saudi Arabia or somewhere, I think everybody knows that there are certain rules that you've got to abide by. And it's always been the case that if you go to those countries, you need to do your homework to ensure that you're not going to break a rule that isn't a rule in your home country. Well, Russia's no different. If you come to Russia, you've got to make sure that you're abiding by the rules. And if you want to go down the path of TRP, permanent residency, citizenship, then military service is part of that, the same as it is for any Russian. And I agree with that. It shouldn't be any different. As a foreigner, you shouldn't come to this country and think, well, I'm special. Don't you know who I am? Well, I met somebody like that, and I think it's a really ugly trait. This particular person had the view that because he was married to a Russian, that when he got to the border, he should just be given citizenship. That was his view. Well, I'm married to a Russian. I'm from England, so I should be given citizenship. I didn't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to that. Why? Why should you? That's why some countries are in the mess that they are. You just hand it out willy-nilly. You've got to commit to the country. You've got to learn the language. You've got to integrate. There is the one language to learn here. All of these other languages aren't acceptable. Russia speaks Russian. So you've got to learn the language. And you need to be part of the... What on earth is that? You need to be part of the culture. You need to understand a bit about the history and the laws. Now, the caveat to that is if you are of retirement age. And if you're of retirement age, what, Luna? You want to go in? Go on in. Food. Go and look for food then. If you're of retirement age, you don't need to learn language. And you haven't got to pass the language test. Derek is a quiet boy. Well, yeah, he is. He's underwater. So, yeah, he is quite quiet. Bless him. The mole alarms aren't quiet, though. That's what you can hear screaming in the background every now and again. There. It's the mole device. It's completely useless and doesn't work, but we have 5 other mole devices. They've got 4 legs and they're furry. Not one of them's any good either. Oh, yeah. This idiot was sat watching the mole the other day, just watching it coming out of the ground, and just sat there looking at it. It's like, what kind of cat are you? Anyway, good morning, Baratiki. Hope you're well. So yeah, that's the thing regarding TRP and filing your tax return. I've just had to file mine, and we did it by showing obviously sufficient revenue generated from savings account. And that really, I think, is the easiest way. If you've got that money surplus, then you can leave it in the bank. If you haven't, then you know, the other option really is to learn a language and go to work. But if you're of retirement age, or you're maybe in ill health and you don't want to be going to work, then, you know, you've got to show once a year that you are capable of supporting yourself. And I know that there are people that have slipped through the cracks. I know of one person in particular that hasn't done any of that and has lived in Russia for several years and sort of negated doing things correctly. But ultimately, this stuff catches up with you. And there's a good saying in Russia, and that's slow to saddle, fast to ride. And that's very true of everything in Russia. You know, the Russians, and certainly the governments and authorities, military, etc., can be very slow and methodical, which can easily, you know, if you're from the West, you can easily just mistake that for being incapable and lax. But it's just the way things work here in Russia. But ultimately, the cogs do turn, and at some point, these things catch up. And once they catch up, then it's everything, and it all catches up with you. So, you know, the people that sort of negate stuff and run around saying, "Oh, I haven't had to do this and I haven't had to do that." Yeah, that's true. You haven't had to. You've got away with it, but you only get away with it until you don't. So my advice is to not try and negate anything. Just play fair. Just play the game correctly. Play by the rules. At the end of the day, paying tax on 13%, paying 13% tax on your income, it's not bad, is it? You know, compared to what you might be used to in the West, that seems like a small price to pay to have the benefits of this country. And equally, having money in the bank and supporting the economy and, you know, spending your money in the shops and everything like that, it's a small price to pay for this kind of lifestyle. Apart from these clouds, I'm not happy about these clouds today. Anyhow, is what it is. Kuzkin Papa, thanks for asking. No. No, it was, blimey, I think she's been gone now 6 months, maybe. Not sure, it's a long time now, Rosie's been gone. But no, we never did. Like an alien abduction. No trace, put up lots of posters, went out searching, etc., etc. So, unfortunately, there's no way of knowing for certain. So this is just my speculation. but at the time that Rosie went missing, there were 2 other Bengals in the village that went missing. And it seemed very coincidental that 3 Bengals all went missing at the same time, within a week of each other. So, you know, unfortunately, they're worth a lot of money here. And, you know, maybe some unscrupulous people thought that that's a good way of generating income. I don't know. It's very sad to think that, you know, we have people that walk the earth like that. But, you know, our particular cat didn't leave home. You know, in the early days when we were first here, she came from England with us. She used to go over the fences over into the other gardens. But one night, I heard a lot of cat screaming and dog barking, and she came back like a bat out of hell, and just, you know, I let her in the house and she just laid with me on the sofa and wouldn't move, you know, and you could tell she was scared, and basically she'd obviously gone out and been chased by a dog. But from that day, she never left the garden, never. But probably the last month before she went missing, she would go over this fence into the house next door, and she would go over this fence into the house next door. And they were the only 2 places she would go. One day, she was out the front of the house, which she never would do, and obviously found herself, I think she'd probably gone through the open gate. You know, curiosity killed the cat, as they say. I think she went through the open gate and found herself locked out, and we'd gone out, came back a couple of hours later, and she was hiding in the bush out the front, terrified. So she wasn't a cat to go wandering around the neighbourhood. So the chance of her getting run over are 0, because there is no traffic around here. The chance of her getting, you know, attacked by a dog is a possibility, but on the day that she went missing, the wife was in the garden all day and she heard no commotion. So we don't think that's likely. So unfortunately, it's my belief that she was taken, just based on all of the circumstantial evidence, which is a real shame. All I can hope is that whoever took her gave her a good home. Get some of these bugs out of the pool, because I definitely will be going swimming at some point. So no, but thanks for asking, but no, the answer is never to be seen again, I'm afraid. Been very upsetting for the wife, and she still has days where she's quite tearful about it. Yeah. What else have we got? 13% is really reasonable. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, absolutely it is. You know, so if you've got a decent pension every month from outside of Russia and you bring it in and you're charged 13%, I don't think that's too bad. I think that's very acceptable. The problem arises, I guess, is if you're paying tax in your home country on that pension, and then you pay tax again. Because I believe that there's a convention that's signed between some countries where you pay tax in one country and that's it. You don't have to pay it in another. But I don't think Russia is part of that. Or if it was, it isn't anymore. So you've got to bear that in mind. But like I say, for me, I think the easiest way really is to either get a job and just pay your way, or with savings, put some money in the bank, generate enough interest to live off of. Job's a good one. Yeah, Kushkin, very, very sad. It's been a sad period in our household. People don't get it. If you're not a cat or a dog person, you won't get it. But You know, when you are a cat or a dog person, it's like a child. So imagine having one of your kids taken. You know, it's a wound that doesn't really heal. Those clouds look water. No. Now, the funny thing with weather down here is you can look at a weather report, and unless it says chance of rain 90%, it's not going to rain. If it says 60%, that just means it's going to do this. If it says 40%, don't even bother. You might see a cloud in the sky. You know, it's summer now, so, you know, it's pretty much sunshine all the time. Sometimes it'll rain at night. That's quite often the case. You come out to the garden, everything will be wet. But predominantly now, summer's arrived. So, you know, you'll have days like this, but you'll also mainly have days where it's just wall-to-wall blue skies and no clouds at all. Catnapping, yeah, indeed. Still more blue sky there than what I've seen here for weeks. So bleak. Where's here, Loopy? Where's here? Have you got... Is that your personal registration? No. Loopy 33Z. Almost looked like registration for a car. Stoic Tom. Yes. Yeah. Talking about countries that have double taxation agreement. Yeah. Somebody's singing. Did she have a chip? Losing a pet like that is very upsetting. Yes, she was chipped. All our cats are chipped. They're all neutered as well. So, you know, she wasn't going to be any use for anybody for breeding. And yeah, she's chipped. But let's face it, a chip is only as good as a vet scanning for it. And, you know, how many vets scan every pet that comes in? They don't. They treat the animal. You know, it's going to be... She's registered as missing. And, you know, maybe one day somebody takes her into a vet's and they scan the chip for ownership. But the chances of that happening, I think, are slim to almost zero. And, you know, I don't live every day hoping to see that cat again. You know, I think Rosie's gone, and that's just... It is what it is. You've got to move on with your life. If you get up every day hoping that today's the day she's going to come back, you're not living. Stoic Tom, where are you? Well, currently sat on my terrace, staring at the swimming pool. I'm in southern Russia. So we're just inland from the Black Sea, outside a seaside resort town called Anapa. If you put into your Google Maps ANAPA, you'll see where we are. We're just inland from there, about 15 minutes. And about 50 miles from Crimea. I lost my 15-year-old dog 1 year ago. Ouch. Lost or deceased? You know, I've gone through both now with pets. Obviously, the cat disappearing, and I've had dogs that have died. And I can tell you, 1,000,000%, I'd rather have a loss through death than through disappearance. Because you know, everybody talks about closure, but it's true. You know, you grieve and you move on. You know, you understand that animal's never coming back, and you remember them fondly. But when they disappear, there is no closure. You're just left wondering. You know, is she all right? You know, when the weather's bad, oh, I hope she's okay. Hope she's somewhere, you know, being looked after. You know, it's permanent torment. And there really should be, really, in my view, severe penalties for people that take other people's pets. You know, I believe that it should be the same as kidnapping a child. And I know some people are going to go, don't be ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. But they're not pet owners. Or if they are, they're not pet lovers. if you're a pet lover, you won't see it any differently. And I think the penalties for taking somebody's dog or somebody's cat, I think the penalty should be severe, because the devastation that it leaves behind is yeah, it's quite intense. You know, I've had to watch my wife crying every day for months. You know, as a bloke, you do things logically and you reason through it and you get on, because you understand that all the upset in the world isn't going to change the outcome. But that's easy for us blokes to do to a degree. Oh, you're hearing stuff from Australia. Wow. Wow. Hot, no doubt. Stoic Tom, I've answered you, mate. Again, what country are you in? But I'm guessing you typed that without hearing. But yeah, southern Russia, mate. In the region of Krasnodarsky Krai. Dog can't recover after surgery. Oh, dog couldn't recover after surgery. Yeah. I had a dog that developed, I don't know what it is, maybe osteoporosis or something, I'm not sure, but effectively he was a pit bull cross. Amazing dog, most amazing dog. And he was getting old. He was probably 10. And went to bed one night and he was fine, came down in the morning and he couldn't get up. And normally he would just, you know, as soon as he saw me, he'd jump up and come sort of galloping over. And he didn't get up. And he was literally paralysed from the chest down. So his back legs just didn't work and he couldn't actually, all he could do was stand on his front legs. I thought, what on earth is going on here? And as soon as you sort of tried to pick him up or move him, he would yelp in pain. So took him off to the vet straight away. And the vet's, you know, a bit puzzled to start with, but x-rayed and basically his discs in his spine, a couple of discs had crumbled to a point that they had then misplaced and they'd put pressure into his spine, and that had resulted in him being paralysed. So this was, I think, like on a Thursday or something. So the vet said, look, you know, you're going to have to understand that he's in a bit of pain at the moment, so I'm going to give him some painkillers and I'm going to give you some tablets for him to take for the time being. But effectively, you need to sort of have your few days with him and then bring him back on Monday to say goodbye. And that was difficult because, you know, he really was part of the family, like I think all dogs are, really, or should be. If your dog isn't part of the family, you shouldn't have a dog. End of. If you're one of these people that thinks it's acceptable to chain an animal in a garden all day, you're a scumbag, in my view. And I don't care what nationality you are. But you don't deserve. Dogs aren't wired like that. Dogs want human interaction. And just to chain them in a garden, I think is absolutely horrendous. And if you're the kind of person that does that, in my view, you are of no value. And I wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire, is my rant. But anyhow, he got prescribed with some medication to ease the pain and some steroids. Now, this is where it went a bit bizarre, because obviously in our upset, we got the dosage wrong. And I think it was something like 1 tablet 3 times a day. And I think we gave 3 tablets 3 times a day. Anyhow, the upshot of it was that a couple of days later, when I came down in the morning, he got up out of his bed and walked across to me, albeit very stumbly and looked like he was drunk, but walked across. And I was just gobsmacked. You know, this is probably the Saturday or the Sunday. What on earth is going on here? So he continued to improve. And on the Monday, we obviously went back to the vets, which was the day that he was going to get put down. And the vet sort of came out of the waiting room and called us in. And Rocky, bless him, got up and walked into the vet's office. And I've never seen a vet so shocked. He just stood there with his mouth open and he just went, "What have you done?" Nothing. We've done what you've told us. We've, given him these pills. And the vet said, I don't understand. And, and at that point, I said, yeah, and we need some more pills, by the way. We've run out. And he said, what do you mean you've run out? You should have enough there for another 2 weeks. And we were like, no. And he, well, how many are you giving him? Well, what you said, 3 tablets 3 times a day. And he went, no, 1 tablet 3 times a day. So, anyhow, without going in depth like that, the result was that we believe that this had stimulated calcium growth. The steroids that he was on had stimulated calcium growth, and basically his spine, the swelling had reduced, and his spine fused together. And he continued to improve every day. And after a few months, he was back to running around, doing everything that he used to, playing, amazing. But then we started noticing some skin conditions, some skin issues. And I can only describe it as over time, over the next year, he developed what you can only describe really as armour plating. He had big calcium plates, if you can imagine, like flat bone, but in like a plate form in his cheeks, both sides, on the back of his head, all the way down his back on both sides. And it was probably 5 to 6 millimeters thickness, but big plates, just like an armadillo almost. And obviously the vet was monitoring him. The vet said he'd never seen anything like it, and they wanted to do a study on him, and they wanted us to go to London so that they could study him. And I suppose in hindsight it probably would have been quite good to help, the science aspect. But I felt the dog had gone through enough, and he just needed to live a good life for as long as we had him. And he lived about another 3 years, but he was like an armour-plated dog. But ultimately, I think this calcium growth ended up in his brain and sent him, a bit mad, I guess, and he started having fits and seizures. So, unfortunately, that was when we had to draw the line. But prior to that, he was, in remarkable health. Crazy situation. But yeah, again, when you have to lose an animal like that, have it put down, horrible process. The next dog that I had to have put down, I didn't take to a vet. I had it at home, had the vet come out. It costs more money, but it's the right thing to do, I think, by the animal. Just taking them to a vet's, dumping them, walking out the door because you can't face it. Yeah, great. So the last thing the dog sees and smells is the inside of a veterinary centre where it can smell the death, and it's terrified. And I didn't think that was the right, I felt very bad about the first dog, but our second dog, when the time came for him to go, we had the vet come to the house, and I held his paw while the vet injected him and said goodbye, and you just watched the life disappear from their eyes. It was hard, horrendous, but it was the right thing to do for him. He was comfortable, he was at home, didn't really know what was going on. It was the right thing for the dog, and that's what you've got to do. I think when you have animals, you've got to do what's right for them, not what's right for you. And that's why I'm very against people just having dogs chained up in gardens all the time. Get something else, get a goat if you want to chain it up in a garden. It doesn't really do a great deal other than wander around, sleep and eat grass all day. But dogs aren't like that. Dogs need people. And it's just not fair. It's not, I think it's really cruel to chain up a dog. But that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. Everybody may not agree with it, and I'm not expecting people to. Sorry to hear about your cat. Mine disappeared 2 days before Christmas and still no sign. Mate, I feel your pain. It's horrendous. Really is. At least, if they've been run over or, a dog's got them or something, and you've got a body, yes, horrific though it may be, and you're going to go through that, at least you've got closure. But when they just disappear, Yeah, it's horrible. Stoic Tom, are expats welcomed in Russia then? I will only comment on my own personal experience. And my personal experience is coming here as a Brit. I came here before the current conflict because Russia was just another destination, somewhere to go in the world. And my wife told me, oh, they've got wonderful sandy beaches and the weather's amazing and the fruit and the food. And I'm thinking, pardon? Russia? Nah. And anyhow, we came here. And then when we actually came back, moved here, it was in the middle of the conflict. And I came here expecting to have to be very careful about what I said and where I said it, based on where I came from. Because I know that's the life that Russians would lead in the UK. They would not be welcome with open arms, far from it, because there's too many idiots, too many sheep that believe everything in the media. And, England is very much a flag-waving country, and it just depends what flag is popular each week as to what flag we wave. 1 week we're told to hate the Germans, and a week later we're told to hate the French. And that's very much British society, or certainly what I call the football element of British society. I don't mean all football fans, it's just an easy way to describe it. But yes, certainly, I would expect Russians to have to think about what they say and where they say it in the UK, without having some idiot be a bit shit to them. Because unfortunately that's the case. Russians aren't wired like that. And my experience is it's the most friendliest country I've ever been in, and I've been in a lot of countries, but I've never been treated so well. In the early days, it was very, very difficult to deal with. I didn't understand why they were so friendly towards me, and it was very humbling, and certainly reduced me to tears on a number of occasions, because I just was so confused by the way that I was treated. And I've subsequently learnt that Russians are far more intelligent than us Brits, and they are very capable of distinguishing between a government and a people. And just because the government might be shit doesn't necessarily mean that the people are. And their attitude is, when I sort of said, oh, I expected people not to be friendly towards me, the attitude was, why? What have you done? And that's what's beautiful about the Russians. They're able to do that. They're able to look at this cat. Look, is she going to end up in the pool? No. They're able to differentiate between a government making bad policy and an innocent person. The people of the country just having to, try and get through life as best they can based on whatever policy the government has churned out. And they're capable of doing that, and they're very, very educated about the outside world. And that's something that the West has tried to cut us all off from. They don't want us knowing what's going on really in the outside. They want us to have a version of the outside world broadcast by the media. And most of the time that is completely false. And certainly when it comes to Russia, it is completely false. I've seen narrative after narrative after narrative since I've been here of just complete and utter fabrication and lies. And I can say that because I see both sides. I'm here. I'm living here. So, when you see stuff in media about Russia that you can see is clearly just not true, it opens your eyes. But when you are just fed one side of a narrative by a controlled media, and by that I mean you can't watch Russian TV in the UK, you can't watch Russian news. Well, I can watch UK TV here. I can watch Hollywood films, I can watch Western news, I can watch CNN. It's not restricted. So you know, when you live in a country that does restrict the news and does stop you seeing both sides, it's very difficult to get a clear picture, which is why I urge people to do their own research. Get away from the TV. TV is a poisonous device. It is just a means of control. Speaking of which, what's the next step of control in the UK? I'll tell you what it is. May not be the next one, but it's coming. And that's dash cams in your car. Now, they're optional at the moment, but they will be compulsory at some point. Don't know whether it's this month, next year, year after, or whatever, but they will become compulsory. That will be the next step. And that will be probably forced on the manufacturers, that they will have to, all new vehicles must have dash cams fitted. And they may well say that all other vehicles over 3 years old or something have to have retrospectively fitted dash cams. Who knows? But certainly it's coming. And once that happens, you have a full surveillance state, because they will all be linked to the current system, and the government and the authorities will be able to see everything all of the time. So that's the next bit of control that's coming. May not be here yet, but it's coming. So yes, Stoic Tom, simple answer to your question is yes. I know I gave a long-winded version, mate, but simple answer is yes. I'm in southeastern Mediterranean. Cool. Southeastern Mediterranean. You asking too much of my tiny brain to work that out, mate. Oh, let's sit down again. Baratiki, lol, what a dog story. Yeah, indeed. Amazing dog that was. Incredible dog. But every dog I've had has been amazing in one way or another. They've all got their own personalities. And you have a dog, I think, and you have it for its life. And you think, you know, when it dies, if you get another dog, it'll never be the same. And that's absolutely true. It never will be the same. But it'll be equally as good an experience, but in different ways. Each dog I've had has been different. They've had their own personalities. They've been different in different ways, regardless of the training. And each one has brought, you know, wonders to my life without a shadow of a doubt. But I'm a cat person now. I like cats. It's weird. Who'd have thought it? I love Russian. Cool. Do you love Russia or you love Russians? I'm trying to be grammatically correct. Or do you just love the Russian language? They are trying to restrict social media in the West because they don't want people figuring things out. Well, they already have, I think, haven't they? Already. What is it? Under 16s cannot go on social media. It's got nothing to do with under 16s. That's just the guise. That's the way that it's sold. Oh, we're protecting the children. And everybody signs up to it because they think, well, that's a good idea. I shouldn't have my kids on social media. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with everybody now that uses the internet has got to enter the information and prove who they are. So all of a sudden, everybody's visible. It's a privacy invasion. You know, just because you may be 38, you now have to prove that. You go to a site and it will say, are you over 16? And you've got to submit some information to prove that you are over 16. So it's got nothing to do with proving that you are not under 16, and everything to show that you're over 16, in which case it's data collection, and it's more control. It's far easier ways of restricting content. And ultimately, that should be down to the parent. Government shouldn't be in your life telling you what your kids can and can't do. That should come from home. You should be a good parent and bring your children up correctly. You shouldn't be relying on government to do your schooling and your parenting. And if you are, you're lost. Are residential visas hard to get, and are the financial requirements high? I don't really know what you mean by residential visa. You have visas and permits. So visas are, they both do both. Yeah, you have temporary residence permit, you have permanent residency, and then you have citizenship. And then outside of that, you have visas. Visas are for travelling to and from the country for short periods of time, for tourism or to visit family. As for financial requirements, there aren't any financial requirements on those types of visas or on tourism, other than if you get a tourist visa, you will, in the application, have to mark down how much money you intend to bring into the country to show that you're not just turning up in Russia with no money. You've got to come with money, and that money needs to be sufficient to support you for your duration of your stay. And if you're going for temporary residency, like I say, you need to, and permanent residency, you need to file a return every year to show that you are capable of supporting yourself financially to the minimum requirements, which will be the minimum wage for the region that you live in. Loopy, dash cams will be something that insurance companies will push for, so they don't ever have to pay out. They'll lobby the government. That's how it'll be sold to you, mate. That will be something. You've always got to look at whatever law is implemented. The reason that you're given will not be the reason that it's implemented. That will just be the one that they have worked out will be the most easy to swallow, the less bitter pill to swallow. So that will be exactly the reason that you'll be given for dash cam implementation. It will be to safeguard you in the event of an accident so that you can prove that you weren't at fault. That will be how it's sold to you, and most people will just suck that up. The reality is, it isn't about that. Isn't about that at all, because I know how the insurance industry works, and it's got nothing to do with fault on a particular claim. I was in that industry for 33 years. I know the motor industry, and I know exactly how the motor industry insurance works. So it's got nothing to do with that. It is everything to do with how can we get more cameras, more surveillance, more control. And yeah, they can put fixed cameras in place and people chop them down. They can put them on buildings and they're okay, but they give partial surveillance. Aside from making every person, individual, wear a camera, which may come one day as well, what's the best way? Well, look at how many cars and vehicles are in the UK. Imagine putting a camera front and rear in every single vehicle. Can you imagine the surveillance that's possible? And of course, it will be sold to you as an insurance, and maybe you get a slight reduction in your insurance premium or something, but that's how it'll be sold to the public. But that won't be the reason for it. Back in the shade. It's hot out there. We'll have to go swimming soon. Loopy, I'm guessing Tom is somewhere near Cyprus. Your geography's better than mine. Shouty bloke, good morning. Morning, Chris, just caught you. Oh, missus. Morning, mate, hope you're well. I moved between Cyprus and 3 other Greek islands. Nice. Nice. And Cyprus is quite appealing in some aspects. It's a good stepping stone as a Brit, because you've still got, the Britishness of driving on the left-hand side of the road and road signs in English and, the road system, traffic lights and roundabouts and all of that kind of thing. So you've still got a lot of that. What I don't like about Cyprus is the amount of graffiti that's everywhere. It just looks like even nice neighbourhoods, all the walls are graffitied and stuff. It looks shit. Sorry, but that government is not doing enough to deal with that. And by deal with that, I don't mean eradicate it. I mean that these people should be given spaces to express themselves. And it shouldn't be on somebody else's property, and there should be heavy penalty for it. You shouldn't be able to deface somebody's property. So it just makes the place look rough. That's my view. But the plus side of Cyprus is zero income tax. So if you're a digital nomad, it's a nice place to go, isn't it? Nice little tax haven. Nice weather. So, yeah, pluses and minuses with everything. Yeah, for me, anything EU related at the moment, I can't see a short-term future. I only see it getting worse. I hope that it turns around. I hope that it, comes back. But I can't see that on the horizon at the moment. So it's difficult to get excited about an EU country. Loopy, they implemented that under 16 thing here in Australia a year or so ago. I figured out it was for digital ID straight away. Everybody knows it here now. Exactly. That's exactly what it's about. So yeah, you were ahead of the game. But most people don't. Most people don't see it coming. I did a poll on my channel about cryptocurrency. Have you any interest in cryptocurrency? Do you understand it? Are you just getting into it? Blah, 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 blah. And I think if you look at the numbers, it's like 75% of people have got either no interest or no clue. And that's worrying, because it's already running the banking system on the back end. And it's just leaving, people are just being left behind by it, and they're not getting clued up on it. They just see it as something that's nefarious, which is obviously what the banking system has done. They want you to see it like that. But the reality is, it's part of your daily life, and you need to understand it. And I encourage people to do some research on crypto. But yeah, it's all linked. It's all linked together. We have to understand that we live in a world of two layers. It's a bit like the Time Machine film from the 60s or 70s, where you've got the Elu and the Warlocks. That's kind of us, but it's in reverse. That film, you had, amazing gardens. Everybody lived a life of wonder and luxury and beautiful fruit and everything. And every now and again, the Warlock would come from underground, and they'd snatch one of the people to feed on. And that was the payoff. You could live a life of luxury, and if you were lucky enough, you would live for many, many, many years, living a fantastic life. We seem to have that in reverse, where it's these, what should be warlocks, are living the life of luxury, and us normal people are underground without the opportunity to go and snatch an elite or a warlock. It's just all arse about face. And the more that we stand around and do nothing other than grumble, the worse it'll get. And that's what we do. And we're very good at doing that, standing around and grumbling, moaning about stuff, achieving nothing. How inviting that pool is. Come on, tell me that is not screaming out, dive into me now. 28.5 degrees in that pool, I think, at the moment. Oh dear. Visa as in right to reside on particular permanent in particular permanent residency. Yes, so there isn't a financial requirement. You haven't got to have $300,000. That's not the requirements. Each visa and each step of residency has its own requirements, but none of it is that you must have a lump sum. You must be able to submit a tax return on temporary residency and permanent residency to show that you are capable of supporting yourself. That's what you've got to do. but that's not a requirement. It's not like you need 300 grand in the bank before you can come in the country. That's not the requirement. So, yeah, there are many aspects of visa and residency, and there are many different parts to each one of those processes. So you've got to sort of research what you want to do, how you want to do it, and then look into the individual requirements for that. So is there an actual retirement visa? No. There is a relaxation of the requirements. So once you get to 65, you do not need to pass the language test. And on a temporary residence permit, you don't need to pass the language test either. However, that expires after 3 years. Well, once you're 65, it doesn't expire. It's just you don't need to pass the language test. I'm not sure if you need to pass any test, actually. I don't think you need to pass the law or history part of it either. I think there's no test. It's just you're 65, so that's it, you're retired. But again, if you are then here as a permanent resident, you will still need to file a tax return. So you will need to show that you're capable of supporting yourself. Wrong, pal. There's no graffiti anywhere near where I live, so I don't know where you stayed. I'm in a highly sought after area. So, Stoke Tom, I'm going to go by, if you look at Alex Christoforou, one of the guys that commentates on, all sorts of things, world events, etc., etc. He's one half of the Duran, got his own channel as well. Alex is very often walking around Cyprus and Greece. And both countries, I think he's a bit of an urban art guy as well, like I used to be. And I understand graffiti because I used to collect urban art. It was my thing. And so I sort of tune into it. I see it, and if I just see it, I notice it. It's one of those things, if you drive a particular car, notice other particular cars that are the same. And certainly if you look at Alex Christoforou's videos, there is an awful lot of graffiti. And I'm comparing that to, everything's got to have a base setting to give you a point of reference. And I'm comparing that to where I live here, and there isn't any. So, yeah, it's much like rubbish. Going back to the UK last year was a real shock at how much rubbish my town has got on the streets. It's absolutely just looks like everybody's run around emptying bins all over the floor. And that's not like that here. So again, it stands out even more. When you live with it every day, you don't notice it. And I'm sure that's with the graffiti as well, Tom. You won't, your brain will tune out to it. Much like living near a railway track. Once you've been living there 6 weeks, you won't notice the trains. If people come around to your house and go, bloody hell, how do you live with those trains? And you'll go, what trains? Your brain will zone it out. But certainly if you watch Alex Christoforou wandering around the streets, there's graffiti and an awful lot of it. So, like anything, it's not everywhere, but it's just one thing I've noticed. In Cyprus, you can have an income of 20 grand before you pay any tax. After this, it is applied on a sliding scale, or you can choose a flat 5% on total income, no matter how high. Lovely. What a beautiful idea. If only England had adopted that, which is why a lot of people are leaving England and going to Cyprus. Like I say, it's a great stepping stone, brilliant stepping stone. English is widely spoken. The road system is the same, or very, very similar. A lot of the signs, a lot of the shops are written in English. It's as a Brit, as an ignorant Brit that doesn't speak any other language other than English, it's a great stepping stone. It's a halfway house. It gives you some benefits without really any negatives. You get the benefit of the tax, and you get the benefit of the weather. So you improve your life straight away on those things alone. The downside, obviously, is it's a different country, it's a different culture. And one of the things I noticed was graffiti, and like I say, I tune into it, and I don't like neighbourhoods that have got a lot of graffiti. I appreciate, Tom, that it may not be the case where you live. Completely understand that. But certainly, given the hundreds of videos that I've watched of Alex and multiple videos from Cyprus, it's something that I see, you know, a lot. So I think it's probably neighbourhood specific, of course. Loopy, I was just going to say, I watch Alex Christoforou every day. I think the graffiti in Athens is worse than Cyprus, but Cyprus does look a little tatty. Yeah, that's the thing. You know, it's something that if you tune into it, if you are aware of it, you'll notice it. It's like anything. And yeah, you're probably right. Nicosia, yes. Definitely Nicosia. I'm not sure of the other names of the places, but he comes from different. You know, he does video from different towns, so it's not just one neighbourhood. It's, you know, I've seen it several places, and it's just something that I notice, and it just makes the place look tatty. And you know, you always look at that and think, well, there must be an element of lawlessness to a degree. If you know, if there's a lot of graffiti and it's on other people's property, then it has to say that the policing is lax in that department, which makes you wonder what else goes on. And again, I noticed that because here in Russia, it's a different thing. It's not that people live in fear, and it's just that people have respect and they wouldn't do it. And that's what I notice. You know, it's not necessarily the graffiti per se. It's how it's, you know, where it's come from, why is it tolerated. And the simple fact here in Russia is, you know, people have respect for other people, and you just wouldn't do it. You know, you might see, I mean, you do see the odd bit of graffiti, but I mean, once in a blue moon, it'll always be on a bit of municipal building, you know, maybe an electric box or something like that. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen anything that I would look at and think, well, that's fresh. You know, it looks years and years old, like Soviet era. You know, it's been there for many, many, many years. It's not something that they do. Like I say, that comes down to respect. You know, I think a Russian, if their kid was brought home because they've been vandalising their neighbour's property, I think here they'd be, yeah, I think the parents would give them a very good talking to, shall we say. They're just brought up differently here. You know, respect other people's property. That's yeah. And that's evident with, you know, the non-existent crime and road rage, which doesn't exist here. You know, things like that. Theft, burglary. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in Russia, but I haven't seen it. You know, there's stuff, there's building materials and machinery just left out the front of people's properties. It's not locked up and chained away. It's not put in containers. You know, when this house was built, the guys that were building it just left all of their tools in the house. You know, it wasn't secure. There was no doors or windows. It was just a shell. There was no gates. There wasn't any security here at all. There were no cameras. There was no security guards. There was nothing. But the workmen just left all their tools on site. Why? Well, because they absolutely knew that nobody would take them. I mean, you can't say that in the UK. Even if they're locked up, even if they're locked away in somebody's van, they still get the vans broken into and the tools taken. They still get the containers smashed open. They still get the metal safety boxes smashed open. You know, that's a real big problem in the UK. It's not a thing here. And it is down to respect. It's just that people, you know, you'd be regarded as some kind of monster if you did that, if you took another man's tools. And that's the society, that's the difference, and that's what I love about this place. How long ago was it? Yeah, graffiti is all over UK and Europe. Yeah, it is. I like how Bulgaria does it. It allows it in certain places. Still has rogue stuff, but looks cleaner. Yeah, absolutely. And that's my view on it. You know, graffiti is an art form. Some of it's just shit. You know, some of it's just toys throwing up and not understanding what it's about. But some of it is incredible, and some of the, the painting here is incredible, but it's not graffiti. It's, it's art pieces, installations. Yeah, some of it is just incredible, and I think there are areas in London now. If you go down Shoreditch, for example, there are places where graffiti is regularly changed and allowed. But again, it's a kind of an unwritten rule as well, that you don't rewrite over somebody else. There's a lot of stuff regarding graffiti, but it doesn't seem to be as art based now. It just seems to be, to me, it seems to be fewer artists and more vandalism. And obviously, all graffitis are vandals. All graffiti artists are vandals. If you look at Ben Iron, he'll openly admit he's a vandal. That's what it is. That's the essence of it. But it should be a place for those people. It's much like skateboarding. When skateboarding was a thing back in the 70s, the kids were riding around the pavements and people were getting their ankles wiped out. So the solution was to build skate parks and get them off of the pavements and give them places where they can go. And same with BMX parks and stuff like that. If you don't want people just doing it everywhere, then provide them with the facilities that they can go and do it somewhere else, in a safer environment or a controlled environment or a better environment. But if you do nothing, then what do you expect? Alex is in Nicosia and Limassol. That was the other place, and some Paphos. Yeah, I've seen him from Nicosia, Limassol, and Paphos, and all of those I've certainly seen multiple lots of graffiti, and it's something that I look for because, like I say, I used to collect a lot of well, we call it urban art, but graffiti art, that kind of thing. I had lots of stuff by Robbo, for example, and you'll only know that name if you know about graffiti. If you don't, you won't know who Robbo is. I had Ein stuff. I met Ein. Went to his studio in Hastings. Yeah, so yeah, it was back in the day. Bill, good morning, sir. Morning, Chris. Hope all is well there in Anapa. Yes, mate, look. All is well, look. Life is good. Cherries on the tree. Peaches are coming along nicely. Pool's at 28.5 degrees. And it's blue skies. Yeah, it's all good, mate. Don't believe the horror stories. I know there are plenty of them. Beach is looking good. I don't know how many thousands of tons of sand have been put down on the beach, but yeah, it'll take a long time for it to get back to the kind of natural look that it had, because it's just got brand new sand everywhere. But over the months and years, as people use it and sit on it and trample it around, it'll come back to normal. But it certainly is, yeah, it's certainly Anapa is back, and the beach opened on June the 1st, so there's so many people here again. Last year it was like a ghost town in comparison, but this year, yeah, there are a lot of people here again. A lot of tourists, a lot of bloody foreigners. Tom, no graffiti anywhere near me or I would move. Fair enough. I've had a base here and Greece for the last 20 years. You're talking about that, Alex, who zooms in on shitty cities and towns. I don't think he does. I think he just goes for a walk, mate, and talks about world events. He's not showing us graffiti. It's not what it's about. I think you're missing the point, Tom. And, sure, if you live in an area where it hasn't got any graffiti, that's great. And even if you tell me that most of Cyprus hasn't got graffiti, great. But certainly, from what I've seen, there are areas that have. And I just find it unsightly. And it's certainly not something I experience here in Russia. So that's my base setting. So, for me, not something that I would like. I'm not going to argue with you about it, Tom. Like I say, if you live in an area that hasn't got it and you haven't experienced it, I'm not going to argue that point. Graffiti in Melbourne is out of control. They've just given up there. All over shop fronts, places are left as shit. Not as bad here. If someone tags our building, it's cleaned off within a week. Yeah, see, that's the problem. Once it's left, then it just, it just encourages it even more. It kind of says it's okay to do it, and it just spreads and gets worse. Paratiki, but he's not Banksy. No, thank God for that. I think the graffiti world is very. It's very tribal for sure, and you will find people that love Banksy and you will find people that hate him. I don't say I hate him. I've never met the guy, but I am not in the Banksy camp, I'm afraid. I don't think it's art. I think it's political statement and making money. I don't think it is art. I don't think it comes from the heart of where graffiti came from. I think it was a toy trying to be a writer. And, I think he nicked a lot of ideas from other artists and then churned them out as his own. And yeah, sure, cutting stencils, back in the day, basic stencil cutting. Can you call that art? Don't know. Nowadays, all done on a cutter. There's no art to it. It's not an artistic thing. The only art that I see in Banksy stuff now really is the political message that it's making, masquerading as art. It's not for me. There's been the occasional piece that Banksy has thrown up that I look at and think, yeah, that's kind of cool, or yeah, that's kind of amusing. But it's about making a political statement, getting notoriety, and shock for shock's sake. So yeah, it's not for me. I like stuff that's a lot more raw, that's not screaming for attention, that's just there because it wants to be there, because somebody has decided that they can paint something, and some of it is beautiful. Yeah, rolling around here, it's mainly drug gang tags. Yeah, a lot of... Back in the day, there used to be a lot more respect in writing. Nowadays, the kids don't understand the culture behind it. So, they'll just come and... there might be a piece that's 20 years old, and some kid will just come and throw up over it, and you just... Oh, dear. But that's because they don't understand it. That's like anything, I suppose. If you don't teach them, what they're going to know. Well, since UK left EU, they now need to prove a minimum amount on their bank account and an income most can't muster, so they don't become a burden to the state, which is smart. Who and where, Tom? Is that going to Cyprus, you mean? Baratiki, yes, Banksy is another illustration of the monetisation economy, yeah. All about PR and money. They created the myth and then monetised it. Yeah. Yep. Shock value. Get the Muppets to buy into it. Yeah. And I've seen the prices of Banksy's rise and fall and, go to stupid prices. And art is very much like that, it's very, very personal. Very personal. It's like wheels on a car. It's very personal what one person likes, somebody else will hate. But a lot of it is hype. And a lot of it is hype for millionaires because it's a great tax dodge. There are various schemes when it comes to art for millionaires to write off shitloads of money in tax. They'll always find a way, won't they? So yeah, the raw basic stuff, where there's an artist behind it, I appreciate that. Yeah. I went to art college, so open-minded in all forms of art. However, the majority of graffiti tends to be political. Yes. I was referring to Cyprus, Greece. Ah, okay, yeah. So I've not looked into going to Cyprus or Greece, so I don't know the full ins and outs of it, mate, and you obviously do. So I bow down to your knowledge on that, but yeah, it makes sense. But I'm not a fan of EU. I think it's absolutely the worst project ever come up with. It was an absolute failed project and an absolute disaster. Countries should be sovereign. You should have your sovereign currency. In my view, this is my view, all the countries in the world should be sovereign. They should have their own currency, and there should be a bridging asset that is used to trade between countries. So they use their sovereign currency to pay into the bridging asset, and coming out of the bridging asset to the other country is their currency, their local currency. And that's the way the world's going now anyway. That's what cryptocurrency is doing. But I think all countries should be sovereign, and they should trade with who they want to trade with, and they should strike deals with who they want to strike deals with. But having one central lawmaker and rule maker never works. Same in business. If you look at any business, I'm going to use the motor trade as an example. You look at any motor trade business where you have multiple dealerships. All the time you have a dealer principal and you have department managers, and that business is run as a standalone business that contributes to the main goal. They work. As soon as you take away a lot of the managers and the dealer principals and try and centralize it, they don't work. And it's just really basic stuff. It's really obvious. But how can, and I've been, I'm talking out of experience here, how can somebody that's located 50, 60 miles away in an office know the demographic of the business that's 50 or 60 miles away, know how it operates on a day-to-day basis, know the customer base, know the staff, know the staff to the point you know their lives, whether, they've got personal issues, blah, 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 blah. And you can't run a business efficiently remotely like that. You need to be in it. You need to breathe it. And the country's the same. If you try and centralise power to Brussels, it doesn't work. And, well, look at Europe and tell... If anybody can look at Europe and say that that's a success, if anybody can look at the UK, regardless of whether you're for or against Brexit, but is any of that a success? I'm not seeing a success there. I'm just seeing decline. And that's all I've seen for decades. I haven't seen anything improving. Well, no, that's not true. Cool stuff improves. What I'm saying overall is I'm not seeing improvements. I'm seeing people percentage-wise living on less money, paying more in taxes, more in bills, having more controls implemented on them, freedom getting less. Let's face it, households now, both parents have to work. There are very, very few households where one parent stays at home all day and the other parent goes out and is the breadwinner and they have a good life. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. What I'm saying is it doesn't happen often, and it doesn't mean that they have a good life. And a lot of people are content to, just exist to give their kids a good start, which is admirable. But it's not what it should be. Home should be everybody happy. It should be, one person looking after the home and the kids and another person going out and earning the money. That has been proven time and time again to be the best way to bring up kids in that kind of environment. Holidays, being able to have some niceties, but how often can you do that now? Oh, bloody flies in the pool. Grr. Get out of my pool. I have to go around with the net, and Derek stopped, has he? Yeah, he's run out of petrol. Better get him out as well. bear with me. There he goes. Hey, Ripple. Yeah, that wasn't a smart move, was it? Can you see the mistake? Chicken was nice, though. Got to rinse it off. Clean fresh water, because the swimming pool is salt water. It'll play havoc with poor Derek. You need to rinse him off a bit. Sorry, very unprofessional of me, but who said I was a professional? Right, let's drag him back round here. Good hose that. One of them expanding jobs, but it's got replaceable ends. So, like a lot of things in Russia, you can buy all the bits. There's a lot of stuff in the West. That's a hose pipe in the West. Predominantly, it's just moulded, isn't it? Where here, all of that end all comes apart, and you can buy all of the individual bits for it. So if it starts to leak or breaks up, you can change it. It's very common. It's not a throwaway society. Another thing I like. The original idea was that of an economic community, and stupid losers hijacked the process and created the EU of today. I think it's the government with the right to punish people and businesses. Yeah, well, it's run by... The thing is, we've coined a phrase of the elites, where we talk about the elites, and I hate that, because there's nothing elitist about these people. That implies that they're above us in some way, shape or form. And the only reason they are above us is in stature, certainly not in morals or values. Most of them are scum. So I hate that term. But it's the one that everybody has coined. The media certainly has coined it. And you've just got this top 0.5% that live a completely different life to us. You know, they're not stuck in traffic jams on the M25 for a start. They're not worried about a restaurant bill or the weekly shopping. They're not popping down to Tesco's and looking at the price of bread and milk. They're living a completely different life to us. And that's what I mean. Yeah, don't get me started. I agree, EU ain't bright. I first went to Greece long before they joined, and same for Cyprus. Yeah, I mean, look what they did to Greece. Christ almighty. Incredible. Russia and its neighbours have a strong economic union, and they stay sovereign. Western Europe should have kept the EEC, European Economic Community, instead of ending up with Fonda crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with countries should be sovereign, and they should be able to set their own rules regarding going into that country like Russia does. You know, Russia has an immigration policy, same as other countries. The difference is Russia enforces it. This is the policy, this is what you stick to. These are the rules. And as long as you understand that, and if you want to come and live in Russia, you abide by the rules. There is no problem. You can have a wonderful life here. You know, you really can. But if you're going to come here with your Western ideas and your Western values and your Western attitude, thinking that you are something special, you're gonna find the ground real quick. How do I bring seawater to the pool? I don't. It's a saltwater pool, but it's not a seawater pool. So the way this works is you add salt to it, much like you would add to a water filtration system. It's the same salt. And then there's some people call it an ozone generator, but it's a chlorine generator. It's an electrode, and that converts that salt into natural chlorine. So it's kind of a bit of a weird one. People talk about saltwater pools and say, oh, I couldn't have a chlorine pool. And it's like, well, you have got a chlorine pool. It is a chlorine pool. It's just different. Rather than adding a big, pot of chlorine, it's done naturally, and it's done much more precisely, because you have sensors, electrodes, that are measuring the pH level and measuring the chlorine level, and the dosing is done by computer, so it's very precise. So you haven't got these big spikes of water quality. You've got very, very stable water, because it's micro dosed permanently 24/7. And our water is amazing now. It takes a while for it to get good, and the first year you're operating, you probably will go through various bits as the water is spiking up and down, and then it gradually levels out over time. And now, I hardly get through anything. I can't remember last time I put salt in the pool, whereas the first year you're going to be adding salt fairly regularly. I can't remember the last time that I've added anything to the pool, actually, other than once a week I add a bacterial agent, which just clogs any bacteria. It just clumps it together so it can get trapped in the filters. But aside from that, and the water balance is perfect. The pH level is perfect, chlorine level perfect, and it's much nicer on the skin. But no, it's just normal water that you add salt to it. That salt gets converted into chlorine, but a natural version. But it's so small, once the water balance is good. It's a bit like having a marine fish tank. If you've ever kept marine fish, it's a very slow process of starting a marine tank. The bigger the tank, the easier it is, because the water doesn't spike. The smaller the tank, the more of a pain in the arse it is to set up. So the slightest thing spikes it up or down. And yeah, a marine fish tank is like a little ecosystem. You've got to get the balance right. She just started up. I'll have a look in a minute and see what the temperature is. So yeah, much better on your skin, a lot less maintenance. So yeah, more expensive to set up. You're looking at a reasonable amount for the computer system and the electrodes and the probes and different pipe work, etc. So they cost more to set up. You can convert a normal chlorine pool into salt, but once you've got it set up, it's a lot less maintenance, and it's much nicer to swim in, much nicer. And although it's a saltwater pool and you call it that, it's not like swimming in the sea. It's not that level of salt. You don't notice it. You don't notice chlorine, you don't notice the salt. It doesn't sting your eyes. You don't stink of chlorine when you get out. Just feels like you've jumped in the shower, to be honest. Yeah, salt water, not seawater. Epstein class, yeah, I think that's a much better description, to be honest. More apt, isn't it? Trouble is, that's all dying down, isn't it? It's all getting swept under the rug. Criminal, isn't it? Absolutely insane. They are not elite, indeed. There's nothing exceptional about these people except for their arrogance. Yeah, their arrogance, their stupidity, and their pure, vile nature. I look at the stuff that comes out of von der Leyen's mouth and that Kaya Kallas, and people like that, and I just think you're just a vile, disgusting creature. Where are your morals? Where are your values? You're standing there trying to be holier than thou whilst regurgitating this absolute drivel and this utter filth comes out of these people's mouths. And they're I think they believe their own hype. They believe that they're, some sort of wonderful crusader They're not. They're just pure, disgusting, vile creatures. And they shouldn't be in charge of anything. When you've got that kind of attitude and mentality, you shouldn't be in charge of anything. Anything. The novelty of my pool is somewhat worn off, so we're thinking of turning it into a novelty garden area, and the sea is 10 minutes away and free. Yeah, it's the same with us. I mean, the sea's 15 minutes away. It's crystal clear. It's 33 degrees in the summer. So it's beautiful and warm. It's a sandy beach. We've got 40 odd kilometres of sandy beach here. You get dolphins that come and swim around your legs. It's a very, very, very shallow entry, so it's great for kids. You can walk out sort of 30 or 40 metres and only be up to your knees. So it's really, really gentle shelf going in. But the ability to be able to walk outside first thing in the morning and go swimming, or in the evening or at night, and not have to go anywhere, have the privacy of it in your own garden. Yeah, I get what you mean. By the end of summer, you know, the last sort of throes of using the pool, just before I put the cover on, I'm kind of done. But we've got a sauna. So we kind of then just switch over to sauna world. You know, through the winter, it's the sauna. And then when summer comes back round, yeah, can't wait to get the pool open and get swimming. And that's where we are now. So, yeah, I understand. And a lot of people, you know, they do close up the pools and fill them with earth and all sorts. But I think a lot of people don't realise how easy a saltwater pool is to look after. And once you're 3 years into a saltwater pool, they're pretty much maintenance free. There's not a lot you have to do. Especially if you've got a robot, you chuck that in and it cleans up around the bottom. Yeah, once your water is balanced and it's taking very minimal adjustments to keep it there, they're really, really low maintenance, and I think that's, most people don't persevere with them long enough, and I think they get fed up with having to test the water all the time and add this and, you know, pH plus, pH minus, and all of these other things you just don't have to do with a saltwater pool. And I think in the beginning, saltwater pools were just, you know, a lot more money. So I think that was probably the main thing. And, you know, people just had the old chlorine pool, and, yeah, 1 minute it's green, the next minute it's, you know, yeah, all of that drama. You just don't get this. I mean, that water there is 3 years old. That's what we filled the swimming pool with when we first started the swimming pool. That's the same water. That's not been pumped out and changed. And I think it's just, if people had saltwater pools and persevered with them, I think more people would keep them. And I think a lot of these pools that get closed down are chlorine pools, and they just can't be arsed with it. Yes, Baratiki. Yeah, exactly that. Use salt instead of actual chlorine. So there's no chlorine additive. It is literally salt that is then converted by a generator. Let me show you. Let me show you the messy pool room. Sorry about sound effects. So, let me have a look at the temperature first. Right, 28.5 degrees in the pool. And this thing on the right hand side here, that shows that the chlorine generator is working, which is this electrode in here. And I don't know if you can see, but you can see sort of like a hazy clouding that's sort of passing through it. That's it converting salt into chlorine. I don't know if you can see that. It's very difficult to see, but if you look in between the electrodes, it looks like there's sort of some fogginess passing through it. Well, that's the electrode converting the salt. And then you have a peristaltic pump, which is in sulfuric acid, which is pH minus. And once your pool has been running long enough, that hardly works. I can't remember the last time I saw that work. I know it does work, but I can't remember the last time I saw it working. And case in point, I've put it onto, this barrel is the original barrel, so this is 3 years old, this barrel, and it's still got some in the bottom. I've just put it onto a new barrel because I figured it probably is due for it, but it doesn't use it. And then you've got pH probe and a chlorine probe, and they take the measurements, and then yeah, they do the dosing if it needs it. But like I say, once they've been running for a long time, it hardly does anything. You know, chemical wise, there isn't any. You know, this stuff here, like a chlorine tablet, that's in case I have to do any servicing to the pool for a long period of time, and I might want to add some chlorine. But where in a normal chlorine pool you'd put one of those tablets into a floating puck and it would dissipate over a day or two, that puck I will literally dip into the water for probably 5 minutes at the most. That's all it'll need. And that's if I'm doing any, you know, if there's anything on the pool, like the sand filter might need taking out a line and cleaning, although it's 3 years old and it hasn't been cleaned yet. I'm just trying to give you an example. If you've got to do any maintenance and you're not generating chlorine, like your generator's out of line for cleaning or something, you might need to dip a puck in, but that's all it is, it's not dissolving. So yeah, it's a different system, but much less maintenance. Owning, so we own these properties. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about prices in Cyprus and Greece, but compared to the UK, it's about a quarter of the price of the equivalent property in the UK. So, yeah. You know, this property in my hometown would cost between 800,000 and £1 million. Whereas we have it for sale for just over 200 grand. So about 20-25% of UK money. What kind of salt is it? It's the kind of salt, if you've got a water filtration system, which are quite common in Russia, it's the same salt that you would put in that. So it's the same. I don't think I've got a bag anywhere. I've got to get one. But if you've got one of these systems, which we just like super clean water, and you've got this and you add salt into this, into that thing, it's the same salt, exactly the same. Yes, you just pour it from a bag. It's in tablet form. It's like these tablets. You get it in 25 kilo bags. And I think when we set the pool up, I think there was about 8 bags went into it when we first set the pool up. So 8 25 kilos, so 200 kilos. But obviously it's ratio specific, so it depends how much water you got in your pool. And then since then, I think I've probably added 4 bags, and I think 3 of them were year 2 and 1 was last year, and I haven't added any this year. So like I say, you know, it's about water stabilisation, and initially it's just up and down, up and down, up and down, so you're going to be using a lot of stuff. But as time goes by, the highs and the lows get less and less, and the water gets much more stable. And it stops, you know, it stops spiking, so you need to do less and less to it. My pool routine now consists of pushing the net around at my leisure. I'm fussy, so I'm always walking around with a net because, you know, I'm always wandering around the pool, so I just pick the net up and wander around with it. I chuck the hoover in. Well, you can chuck the hoover in as often as you like, depends how dirty you want the bottom of your pool. If it's open like this, it's going to get a lot of debris in it, you know, if it rains, etc, etc. So I probably throw the pool cleaner robot, I'll probably chuck it in once a day. But I don't need to, I just do because it's there and it doesn't do any harm, and just turn it on, throw it in the pool, and away it goes. Doesn't need any input from me. Ripple, what are you doing? Ripple. Oh God, eating grass, that's not a good sign. Yeah, so yeah, you just pour it in from the bag and just literally flood it in. You're making me want to get a saltwater pool. I need to learn more about the electronic system associated with it. I would heartily recommend it. Like I say, setup cost initially is more because you've got to buy the computer and the generator and the electrodes and additional pipe work, etc., and the peristaltic pump and blah 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 blah. But once it's up and running, like I say, it's virtually no maintenance. It's lovely to go and swim in. You haven't got that horrible itchy eye syndrome that you have with a chlorine pool. You don't stink of chlorine. Your skin isn't all dry and flaky. You come out of there and it feels like you've just been bathing in milk. It's lovely. It's really nice. So yeah, got a great local pool company to us called Paradise Pools in Anapa. The guy that owns it, Mikhail, lovely guy, super helpful. But obviously Russia's a big place, so I'm pretty sure he's quite happy with his local clients. And obviously pools down here are quite a thing. There's a lot of people that have swimming pools. Tom, we have a saltwater pool, but I'm sick of the sight of that concrete hole in the ground, and no way can it replace the health benefits of the natural sea and coastal breeze anyhow. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of breathing the same air as the coastal breeze because it's the same breeze. And yeah, I get, going and bathing in the sea. And a lot of people come to Anapa for that reason. This area is very much about sanatoriums and, health spas, what we would call them in the West, where people can go and bathe in the natural waters and, the natural spring water. There's a lot of that stuff down here. It depends what you want to pull for. I haven't bought it for, or we haven't got it for, its health benefits per se, other than exercise. I can go and jump in there and do 50 lengths in the pool, and it's good exercise. But yeah, it really depends. If you've got a saltwater pool, then there's no maintenance to it. So it's just, yeah. I mean, we've had it 3 years. I can't imagine being without a pool. But in 10 years' time, I might feel differently. I might think, I'm sick of the sight of it. I don't think so. I don't know why I would be sick of the sight of something that I enjoy using. Even as a kid, I used to go to the swimming pool. And yeah, whilst the beach is lovely, and certainly walking out into the beach and having dolphins swim around your legs is an unbelievable experience. I like the flexibility of having it there, being able to just walk out the back door and jump in it. Yeah, it doesn't mean we don't go to the beach, we do, but we don't need to go there. It's something that we choose to do when we want to, as opposed to, it's a really hot day, I want to go swimming, so I've got to go down the beach. Whereas here, it's a really hot day, I want to go swimming, there it is. So, yeah, it's a convenience thing. Loopy, we had a chlorine pool when I was growing up. Calcium hypochlorite is what we used. Father delegated to the kids. Had to give that thing pregnancy test regularly. Yeah, I used to have a hot tub in the UK, and it's the same sort of thing. It's probably a bit worse because once you start, I think, getting above 34 degrees, I think it is, then, it's a breeding ground for bacteria. So you have to be, very hot on your hot tub maintenance to keep the water in good condition. But the other problem with a hot tub is the size. So the water spikes because, it's very small in comparison to a swimming pool. So, yeah. Whereas here, I don't need a hot tub. That's 28.5 degrees in there now. In the middle of summer, that'll be 33 degrees. I don't need a hot tub. And it still feels cold when you first get in it. Not cold, but it still feels colder because 33 degrees, body temperature's 36, isn't it? 36.5. So anything less is going to feel colder, but no. You know, getting into that 33 degrees at 11 o'clock at night is freaking lovely. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. That's a pretty simple system. I thought the probes would be in different parts of the pool. What I see here is a straightforward system right on the feeding pipes. Yeah, we've got lots of valves in our pipes so that we can isolate different areas. I'll show you it a bit more. But it's a very simple system. And this whole side panel just comes off. I've just got a couple of bolts, and this whole side panel comes off. Makes access a lot easier. Goes into the sand filter, and then I've just labelled everything so I know which way the water flows. And then there's an auto top up, so any evaporation, you know, I'm not putting a hose pipe in the pool to fill it up, it just does it automatically. Like I say, goes into the sand filter, and just various things to do on the sand filter, but you know, next to nothing now. And then you've just got valves where you can isolate stuff. You've got the main pump, got a little filter in the main pump that you just have to lift out and clean every now and again. And then you've got the peristatic injector for the pH minus, and then the probes. It's pretty simple. Pooltronic. And at the moment we're running this at 760 for chlorine. Normally that would be 650. It's just that the probe is in need of calibration at the moment, so if I run it at 650 it's not quite enough for the chlorine, so I run it at 760 at the moment, just until we've calibrated the probe, which is there, and we haven't got around to doing it yet. But yeah, really simple system. Actually, I can open the sump up now. There we go. I'll close the sump when the hoover's in, because the drawer on the sump just sticks the hoover to the bottom of the pool, doesn't move. But yeah, very messy, untidy pool room, I know, but yeah, very straightforward, simple system, and like I say, the computer does everything for you. So I've got a manual kit there to check the water quality, which on a chlorine pool you should be doing every day. I do it maybe once a month. When we first set the pool up, I was doing it every day, and then twice a week, and then once a week, and then once a fortnight, and so on and so on. And you get to a point where everything's balanced, everything's working well, the computer chlorine level is, and you know, if I check it with the manual, it will be exactly what the computer says, so there's no point in checking it. Pooltronic, so I think you saw that there. How do you know to add salt? So if once you get to this stage, it's using less and less of everything. So it's generating less chlorine. Chlorine does evaporate, but it's the same principle as the sea. That's what the sea does. You know, the sea converts salt into, you know, into natural chlorine. It's the same sort of system. But how do you know to add salt? Well, the computer will, if there isn't sufficient salt level to generate chlorine, your chlorine level will drop. So you'll know that you've got either a probe issue, which is what we have at the moment, it needs calibrating, or you haven't got enough salt. Now, 2 years ago, I added 3 bags of salt throughout the year. Last year, I added 1 bag, which was 25 kilos of salt. And this year, I haven't added any yet. Doesn't mean I won't need to, but I don't need to yet. So yes, quite simply, your chlorine level won't go up. And yeah, it's I can't remember what size that ball is. I think it's 8x4, or is it 7x3.5? I think externally it's 8 meters by 4 meters, and I think internally it's 7.5 meters by 3.5 meters. I think something like that. Yes, Stoic Tom, definitely. Certainly this area, and believe it or not, we live in an expensive region. I think Krasnodarsky Krai is the 3rd most expensive region for property in Russia, given that there's 90 odd regions, over 90. So yeah, it's not a cheap region to live in. But if you are a non-Russian, you will not be able to buy property on the coast unless you're a Russian citizen. Again, part of the rules, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I shouldn't be, as a Westerner, I shouldn't be able to bring Western money here and buy beachfront property. That should be reserved for Russians, and it is, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. But yeah, certainly investment opportunity. Yeah. Are you entitled to free healthcare, or must you purchase private medical insurance? No, on temporary residence permit, you're entitled to free healthcare. So I get free healthcare. Yes, Paul's good for exercise, but then I'll have a gym in my house. Yeah, my gym days are over, mate. I used to do kickboxing and Muay Thai and stuff for many years, and I'm a bit busted up now. I'm a bit old, I'm a bit fragile, and I like the support of a swimming pool. Yeah, my gym days are over. I don't find gyms in the conventional sense interesting either. I find them, they just don't float my boat. You know, if it was, you know, training for kickboxing or something like that, then I had interest in that. But just going to the gym, it never got me. You know, I know some people, and I've got friends that go to the gym and it's part of their life. They just do it. You know, they get up early in the morning and they go every day. They go to the gym for an hour before they go to work or before they do anything, and they love it. You know, my son is a gym fanatic. He's in the gym 4 or 5 days a week, and it's one of those things. I think you either get into it or you don't, and I never did. I just found it tedious and boring. Tom, what's your highest summer temperatures there? So I've seen, I think, 39 degrees. So mid to high 30s. I think, you know, depending on, you might spike into a 40, but not every year. This year, for example, it's been very wet. Very wet. Summer is really, and you can taste it in the fruit. The fruit is more sour than it normally is, because we haven't had the sun that we would normally expect. So it's been a very wet start to the year. Normally I'd have been watering the plants and the grass by now for probably 6 weeks, and I haven't watered anything. We haven't had to water the grass, we haven't had to water any of the plants. Yeah, so it's been a very wet start to the year this year. Now I'm talking about plants, my brain's going, cherries, nom nom nom. Peaches, this is what's nice. And I know in Cyprus you can just go and pick oranges and lemons off the side of the road. It's a similar thing here with peaches and walnuts and cherries. You know, they just grow on the side of the road, grow like weeds. Oh, that looks like it's got my name on it. Look at that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, they're still, compared to last year I was so sweet. Sorry, year before. Last year we didn't have any. Year before they were so sweet. But last year the trees, all the fruit trees, took a year off and didn't produce anything, which is what they do apparently every 7 years. So last year we probably had 6 or 7 peaches and probably 30 cherries. This year we've probably got 100 odd peaches and 1,000 cherries. So yeah, but yeah, it's been very wet. So the old peach tree has chucked out some of the peaches already. They do that. They just decide that they can't supply all of these peaches with nutrients, so they throw some out. It's a bit like a bird kicking a chick out of the nest. But yeah, got plenty of peaches. Apricots as well, they're coming along quite nicely, look. Got plenty of them. Oh, yeah. Oh, look. Wow. Yeah, lovely. That's one of the things I love about you. You don't do that, but you only get that with the weather, don't you? And I know Russia isn't exclusive for the weather. There are plenty of places where you can grow nice fruit and veg. But as a Brit, that's a real novelty, being able to walk out, pick cherries off the tree and eat them. And those peaches, if you haven't had a nap of peaches, well, you haven't lived, because those peaches are something else. They really are. I just hope they're going to be this year. I hope we get enough sun. Well, I know we will, so it'd be nice. But yeah, there's something special about peaches from a Napa. They are just incredible. Walking briskly for an hour or two is excellent exercise. Add in 30 minutes fast swimming session and you're good. Yeah, see, I swim far more than 30 minutes every day. And I haven't really gone out. I mean, as you know, I was going out and doing 10, 12, 14 kilometre walks around the village doing live streams. But now the internet is a lot more restricted because of the activity of the neighbours. It's not as easy to wander around live streaming. For a start, in the centre of the town or centre of our village, there's no live stream connection. It just cuts out because it's obviously blocked to protect the businesses, etc. So live streaming, I can start here, and by the time I get anywhere near the town, it cuts the stream. So live streaming now, like I used to, isn't any good, and we haven't had the weather for it. I'm not one for wandering around in the rain. So I haven't been out, but there's a couple of places that aren't affected, like a Brow de So. I can go there and live stream. And then I can get some exercise, but we've been waiting for the weather, really. We've been waiting for summer to turn up, and it has now, so we've got some things planned. And yeah, hopefully going to Krasnodar soon, to the park there, and going to start getting out and about a bit more now that summer's back. Tom, old, I'm 68 with a bod that shamed most 35-year-olds. Well done, mate. Good for you. Good for you. Yes, they were, mate. They were very yummy. Yeah, see, that's a little bit too hot for me, mate. Once it gets in the 40s, that's too hot for me as a Brit. I mean, when I first came here in October 2021, I was walking around on the 21st of October in shorts and a t-shirt. and all the locals are wearing coats and they're looking at me like I'm a mental case. But it felt hot to me at 23 degrees. But I'm acclimatised to it now. And when we first came here, when we first started the pool, I think I was in it when it was like 17 degrees, 18 degrees. Whereas now, 27 degrees is kind of the minimum. Less than that, and it just feels cold. But that's because I'm acclimatised to it, You get used to it. Baratiki, what is that beeping sound? That beeping sound is a mole device. Where is it? There it is. So it's a little solar powered stick that goes in the ground, keeps the moles out of the garden. So yeah, we've got sort of there's another one over there, and I think there's a couple more up the end there, just to keep the moles out of the garden. Kind of works. You'd think with 5 cats we wouldn't have that issue, but no, they're all useless. Oh, better move that glass of water out of the sunshine. Oh yeah, that's better. That's nice. I'll have to go in the pool, guys. Yes. So that's nice. I called up with the chat, which is good. And I think I need to go and sample the delights of the swimming pool rather than just stare at it. Yes, mate, they do. They just look at them. Stupid animals. And there we go. Guys, thanks very much for joining me on my impromptu live, as it often is. As usual, please like, share and subscribe. Hit the hype button if you don't mind. Join my Telegram group if you use Telegram. If you want to message me, feel free. If you've got any questions, hit me up. No such thing as a stupid question, but I'm very good at giving stupid answers. But thanks for joining me. I'm going to go off swimming, and I'll see you in the next one.